Hi everyone, it's me, Jay-Z, and welcome to the very first episode of Jay-Z's Crazy Creations. Let's get crazy! Yes! So crazy right now! Today's episode, knitting! For a long time, I've always been fascinated with knitting. As a child, when I would watch on TV, I would see people knit and think, that is such a cool thing to make clothes out of string. And I've always wanted to try it, but as a kid, I never had the attention span. And then finally, when I was about 16, I got my first pair of needles, my first ball of yarn, and a self-help book, and I fell in love with it. But along the way, there were always some snags. Snags. And so, I had a very tough time learning. But then, I discovered YouTube. YouTube helped a lot, but there were still some things I could not understand. I could not, for the life of me, figure it out. So if you're a beginner knitter, and you don't know what to do, it can be daunting. I mean, the first time I tried it, I had a kit that had the right yarn and the right needles, but not everyone can be that lucky. I mean, if someone finds a book or a YouTube video and they're like, I want to try that, and go out to the store and just pick up any size needle or any size yarn, they might get a headache. So I'm going to go to the table right now and explain what to look for beginners. Okay, so I'm here at the table and I've got me some needles and some yarn. This setup is a beginner knitting set. So when you're shopping for yarn, let's say, this is not sponsored, you like the color, you think the size is good, but you don't know if it's for beginners. What I recommend is always going for a size 4 yarn. This is a size 4, and how do I know that? Because here on the label, you'll see a yarn ball right there, and it says size 4, and it also says medium. A medium weight yarn is always a beginner yarn. Alright, so you found the yarn, and now you're going to go shopping for needles. How do you know what to get? Well, don't fret, because on the yarn label itself, it tells you what size to use for knitting or crocheting. Here is the knitting symbol, and it tells us to look for a size 8 US needle, or also 5mm if you're in the UK. So always look on the yarn label for information. You can notice there are many other symbols and stuff on yarn labels, but we will be doing a video on yarn labels in the near future. So I've looked at my yarn ball, and it says we should use a US size 8 knitting needle, or a 5mm if you're in the UK. Here are the very first pair of knitting needles I ever got. You can tell they are worn out. The paint is coming off of them. They are metal, and yarn needles come in all different things, from metal to plastic to wood. There are even some that light up on the tips. It's very cool. But how do I know this is a size 8? Well, some needles will put the size on the sides, or they put it right here on the ends. As you can see, it'll say size 8 or 5mm. Okay, let's get started knitting, shall we? I've got here my size US 8 knitting needles and a number 4 weight yarn. I'm using white so it's easier to see. So how do I get started knitting? You're probably asking yourself. Well, you always want to start with a slip knot. Here's how I do a slip knot. There are many ways to start slip knots, but this is how I learned. So, I've got the tail of the yarn in my right hand, and I'm gonna make a gun with my left hand, while also holding the yarn. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to wrap the tail around the barrel of the gun, and I'm gonna make an X, just like this. I pulled the trigger. Now I'm gonna take the main yarn and put it between the barrels, just like that. Now you can see there's a loop right here on my fingers, and here's the main yarn. I'm gonna take this loop, I'm gonna pull it over those fingers. And now I have a loop right here. I'm going to take the main yarn and cinch it. And now you have a slip knot. This is how I do my slip knots. There are many ways to do a slip knot. If you don't like how I do it, you can look up how to do slip knots on YouTube. But this is how I learned and how I do it. So, now we've got our slip knot. I'm going to put it on a needle in my right hand. And this is going to count as our first stitch. So, how do I get more stitches on there without making more slip knots? Well, for a beginner-friendly stitch placing, or what it's called in knitting is called casting on. We're going to cast on a bunch of stitches on our needle. So this is how you're going to do it. With the right hand, hold the tail out of the way, because you don't want to be using the tail. You want to use the yarn that's coming from the ball. Now I'm going to grab the yarn with my left hand, and I'm going to give this yarn and this needle a big thumbs up. And now I'm going to scoop the yarn. I'm going to go from the top and scoop. Or you could say I'm going to go from the top and loop it. I'm going to loop it. See how easy that is? Let's do that in slow motion. Okay, that was cheesy. But now I got a loop on my thumb, and I'm still giving it a big thumbs up. And with my right hand, I'm going to go over on this side of the yarn that's coming from out of my fingers. I'm going to scoop right under that and take that loop. Still giving it a big thumbs up. And now I'm going to cinch it on there. Don't pull too tight, otherwise you're going to end up with a headache when you start knitting. And now you can see we have 2 stitches. And you're just going to keep doing that for about 25 to 30 stitches, which is a good beginner start. So let's continue with that. I'll show you again. And give it a big thumbs up, still holding the yarn in my hand. Loop it around. Scoop underneath and take it away. Cinch it up. Big thumbs up. Loop it around. Scoop and take it away. And that's how you cast on. Okay, so I've got 25 stitches on my needle. How do I know? Because I counted the loops. Let's count them together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. I've got 25 stitches on my needle. And you always, always, always count that slip knot loop. Now I'm going to put the needle with the stitches in my left hand, scooching it up towards the tip. Makes it a whole lot easier. And now I'm going to take the empty needle in my right hand. Now let's start knitting. What I recommend you do is hold the needle and the yarn in your right hand, because what you need for knitting is tension. If you don't have tension, it's going to be a mess and a big, big headache. I cannot stress that enough. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take our right hand needle and we're going to go from the front of this loop. This is the front. Back here's the back. We're going to go from the front and we're going to kind of scooch our way into that loop. See? We're in that loop now. Now I'm going to pinch these two needles so they don't go anywhere, and I'm going to take the yarn in my right hand. I'm going to go under the right hand needle, around and over the top. So just like this, one fell swoop. Going under and over. Grabbing the needle again. I'm going to, now see, I'm pinching. Here's where the tension comes in. I'm pinching the yarn, and I'm going to pull this loop. You see that right there? There's that new loop. I'm going to pull it through the old one. Now I've got a loop on my needle on the right hand and on the left. This is old. We don't need that no more, so goodbye. And you just officially knitted your first stitch. Let's do that again, shall we? We're going to go from the front. We're going to go from the front to the back, just like that. Take our yarn, wrap, whoops, under and over, pinching for tension. I'm going to pull that loop through the old one. And we don't need that old one no more. So we'll take that off. And you just keep going all the way down. So now I want to show you what happens when you don't hold the yarn and how much of a headache it can be. So I'm not holding the yarn. I'm doing as before, going from the front through to the back, grabbing the yarn and putting it under and over. I'm not going to hold it. I'm going to try pulling it through. See? It popped off. Let me try that again. And see how much of a headache that can be? Okay, I'm back. I've knitted across all but one. Why did I knit across all but one? Because I thought we should do our last stitch together. Let's do it, shall we? From the front to the back, taking our yarn, tensioning it, going from under and over. Ta-da! We're at the end! Now we've got stitches in our right hand and an empty needle in our left. So what are we going to do? To continue, we're going to switch hands. I know, it's that simple. Now take note. We've got the main yarn here, and we've got the tail right here. Always locate your tail, because if you start knitting with your tail, it's gonna be a bugger to get out. So locating the main yarn, we're going to start all over again. After knitting a few rows, you should end up with a piece of fabric that looks like this. This here is called garter stitch, which is knit every row, and we will be doing more stitch patterns in the near future. So that's all I have for you guys today. If I have left something out or you have questions, please leave it in the comments down below, and I will always read your comments, and I will always reply to those comments. I hope you all have a very, very, very blessed day, and as always, stay crazy.